We're going to continue graphing sine and cosine. What we're going to do is we're going to add the frequency and the period. The frequency and period are reciprocals. All the graphs that we've been using with sine and cosine always had a period of 2 pi. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work with our b value, which is our frequency. And whatever our b value is, we're going to take 2 pi and we're going to divide it by that. And that's going to tell us what our new period is. Now, if our b value or our frequency is greater than 1, then that means that we have horizontal compression. So if we have our normal sine curve, compression makes it really thin, so it finishes a full cycle sooner. Stretch is when it expands it. So we have our sine curve and it's expanded horizontally. And that's what the b value or the frequency does. So let's look at a couple examples. For the first one, we see that we have a b value of 2. So that means that our period is equal to 2 pi over 2, which is our b value, and that's equal to pi. So that means that when we're filling out our table, what we're doing is we're still starting at 0, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to end at pi instead of 2 pi. Now, since we're dividing everything by 2, we take our normal theta values, like pi halves becomes pi fourths, pi becomes pi halves, and 3 pi over 2 becomes 3 pi over 4. So those are all of our x values. We're going to be using the same sine values, 0, 1, 0, -1, and 0. Now, since we're not adding or multiplying anything, all those values stay 0, 1, 0, -1, and 0. Now, when we're graphing this, what we're going to do is instead of putting 2 pi, we're ending at pi. Our maximum is 1. Our minimum is -1. So we have 0, 1, 0, -1, back to 0. And instead of completing a full cycle in 2 pi, it completes a full cycle in pi. Now, looking at letter B, notice that our B value or our frequency is 1/3. So that means that our period is 2 pi over 1/3. Now, whenever we divide by a fraction, we're really multiplying by the reciprocal. So that means that 2 pi times 3 is 6. So we have 6 pi. When we draw our table, we have 0, or we have theta and we have y. We have 0. Now, what we're doing is we're multiplying all the values by 3. So we end with 6 pi. If we multiply it by 3, this would become 3 pi over 2. This would become 3 pi. And then what we would have is 9 pi over 2. Those are our x values. Since this is cosine, that means we're going to be using our pattern 1, 0, -1, 0, and 1. What we're doing is we're adding 1 to each of those. So this would become 2, 1, 0, 1, and 2. So it ends at 6 pi. Our maximum is 2. Our minimum is 0. So we have 0, 2. We have 3 pi over 2 and 1. We have 3 pi and 0. We have 9 pi over 2 and 1. And we have 6 pi, which goes back to 2. Now for our last one, because we have a frequency, we're going to find our period, which is 2 pi over 3. So that means that when we're making our table, what we're doing is we're taking each of our x values and we're dividing them by 3. 0 stays as 0. Pi halves becomes pi 6. Then what we have is pi becomes pi over 3. And 3 pi over 2 becomes 3 pi over 6, which reduces to pi halves. And then, of course, ending at 2 pi over 3. What we have is our sine values. Our sine values are 0, 1, 0, -1, and 0. So this time we're multiplying by 2. 0, 2, 0, -2, and 0. Our maximum is 2. Our minimum is -2. And 0, 0, pi 6, 2, pi thirds, 0, -2, and back to 0.